Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and with me today I have a person who I have never interviewed in this category. I've interviewed wannabes, but never a real live judge. So this is our judge from East Hampton, and her name is Lisa Rana, and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I'm very interested in finding out all about you. So tell me, where were you born, raised?
I was actually born in Southampton Hospital, raised in Amagansett. I went to grade school in Amagansett. That's when Amagansett was through 8th grade. And then I went to 2 years of high school in East Hampton. All of my siblings were raised out here with me, and they all were graduates of East Hampton High School. I decided, much to my parents' shock, that after my sophomore year of high school, I would like to go to boarding school. So I did my last 2 years of high school at a school called Buxton, which is a small independent boarding school up in Williamstown, Massachusetts. And then from there, I went to college at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. And from Amherst, from Hampshire, I went to New York City, and I worked a little bit before I went to law school.
Where'd you go to law school?
I went to law school at Toro Law School, and graduated in 1992. Yeah.
And all of that time, you were in New York City?
I was in New York City after I graduated from Hampshire College, which is in Massachusetts.
Yes.
I lived in New York City for a couple of years, and I was a caseworker in the New York City foster care system for a private agency called St. Vincent Services. So when I was a caseworker working with children in the foster care system, initially I was thinking that I wanted to become a clinical psychologist. But after working in the foster care system and appearing in court to testify on behalf of the cases or about the cases that I was a caseworker on, I really felt that I would serve that community better as a lawyer. So that's when I decided that I would go to law school. And I went to Toro Law School, graduated actually a little early because I took some summer classes and some accelerated scheduling. And when I finished law school, I opened up my own firm and was a law guardian, which is an attorney that represents children. And I did that for many, many years before I also, went on to be an administrative law judge in New York City as well for the New York Taxi and Limousine Service, which is, is a little bit of a crazy crossover, but I got an opportunity to be an administrative law judge, and I took that opportunity as well. So I've had a varied career before I came back out to East Hampton. Not only a varied career,
but a very full career. Yeah. My goodness, I'm really rather impressed. I didn't know these things about you.
Yes.
That's quite a bit of...
Yes. I enjoyed working with children, and I enjoyed both as a caseworker. It was very, very rewarding, but I felt a bit frustrated because I thought I could do more to advance the needs of the children that I was working with in the foster care system. And I felt they needed stronger advocacy because the advocacy that I saw as a caseworker while I was in the family courts of New York City, I felt it could use some improvement. So I went to law school, and I decided that that's what I would do. I'd represent children. And I did that. Mostly in Westchester. I also was assigned some cases up in Rockland County and Orange County when, certain people had to recuse themselves or they had a difficult case and they couldn't find an attorney to represent the children. I'd sometimes get those assignments as well. But after doing that for some time, I felt like I needed a little bit of a change, something to just kind of break that up, because it was very intense work, working with.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I know.
Oh.
I've worked with children all my
Yeah.
life, so you don't have to tell me about, you know,
No, I admire
advocating
people.
for children, because that's.
Yeah. I admire people that do that work, because it can be heart-wrenching, it can be really rewarding, but it's usually some very difficult stories, and you know, it has a special place in my heart for people that, you know, were able to do that work. And I enjoyed it when I did it, but I also felt like I needed to kind of do some different stuff to break it up a little bit. And that's when I had the opportunity to become an administrative law judge with the Taxi and Limousine Commission. And I did that for several years. And I eventually became the chief administrative law judge of all the administrative law judges of the Taxi and Limousine Commission. And then when there was...
And that's in New York City?
In New York City. And then there was a change of administration, and I was actually appointed to be the chief of staff of the New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission, which was a very big job. You know, they had, I think at the time when I was chief of staff, it was like over 400 employees at the Taxi and Limousine Commission. So living in New York and having those varied experiences, you know, exposed me to a lot of different things in life, things that you necessarily wouldn't be exposed to living in a rural community that I grew up in. Living in New York was a great time and a great experience for me. I made a lot of friends. I gained a lot of experience. But there was a time when I felt like I was ready to leave New York.
Come home?
Yeah, I wanted to come back home. And I wanted to live a bit of a simpler life. And so, you know, when I met my husband, we got married, and he's living in East Hampton. I moved back here, and I opened my own practice out in East Hampton for a short period of time. And then a vacancy opened up in the Justice Court. Judge Walker was retiring, and I petitioned to get the nomination, and that was my first election back in 2003, and it was a very big election for me, and that's when I won my first election to become the East Hampton Town Judge.
Wow, it must be something to actually sit and have to judge. I mean, that's a big word, judge.
Yeah.
I mean, you really are evaluating what someone has done, how they have lived their lives, and the choices they have made. That's quite a burden.
It's a burden, but it's a burden that I accept, because I also think it's an honor to be trusted to be in that position, that the community has trusted me over the last 16 years to preside over the cases that appear in the East Hampton Town Justice Court, and actually affect the lives of the people in our community. It affects the defendants' lives, the people that are in front of me having been accused of a crime. It affects the victims' lives, the people who are the victims of the crime. It affects the families of both the defendants and the victims. And it affects the community as a whole, because, you know, making sure that we have a safe community and a fair community, making sure that we have a safe environment to live in, but also be absolutely fair to the defendants that come before you, and ensure that all the laws are adhered to, and have a fair interpretation of the laws that are in front of you. That's an essential part of maintaining a good community. And I've been blessed with the support of the community for the last 16 years to give me the opportunity to do that. But, you know, I do think there's a difference between being a judge and being judgmental. And no, but I do, and I actually have thought about this quite a bit. Because, I mean, having been on the bench for 16 years, I understand that I need to be a judge and I need to evaluate the cases that are in front of me. But I try not to be judgmental over everybody's life decisions, about the types of personal decisions they make. Being able to be a judge in the community and apply the laws to the facts and think about what appropriate sentences are if somebody were to be found guilty of a crime requires you to be a judge. It requires you to be fair and impartial. Being someone who's judgmental, almost as though you have an air of being above everybody else, and looking, whether you think that, it could be anything, whether this person is a nice person or they come from a good family or they come from a bad family. I'm not about being judgmental. I am about being a fair judge, and I think that's the biggest and essential component. It's not whether you're poor or you're rich. You come from East Hampton or you come from New York. It's about being a judge for everybody that comes into our community. Yeah.
Well, I must say I'm quite impressed with that point of view, because I think you're absolutely right. And the fact that you emphasize the word fair, I mean, that's
fair and impartial.
Key.
Yeah.
That's a key thing.
It's an essential quality to have if you're going to be on the bench. And it's not easy. Let me tell you, sometimes you really have to set aside any kind of personal failings that you might have from your own life and not bring all of that onto the bench. Some days you may have a bad day at home. You may have gotten a bad phone call. Maybe something's going on in your personal life that is, stressing you out. Whatever the case may be. I recently lost my father, and that was a very stressful time in my life. As a judge, you can't bring that on the bench. You have to go on the bench with a clean slate. You have to be able to look at the cases that are in front of you in a fair and unbiased manner, and then serve justice. And it's not always an easy thing to do, and it's something that I think the longer you're on the bench, the more practice you get in doing it, the better you're able to do that. But I don't think it's something that's a piece of cake. It's something that you work on all the time.
Yeah, I would imagine it's not a very easy thing,
especially in a small community. You live in a community where you know a lot of people, and you have to put those personal feelings aside.
Have you ever had somebody come before you and you did not want to have to be the judge in the case because you knew them?
If I have a personal relationship with somebody that is such that there would even be an appearance of impropriety or an appearance of impartiality, I recuse myself. And that's, we have 2 judges that sit in East Hampton, and that's one of the reasons why you have 2 judges, besides the fact that the caseload is so heavy. So I don't hesitate to recuse myself if I feel that I have an inability to be impartial because of a personal relationship. There are some situations where you're required to recuse yourself. So if you've had somebody as a client within 2 years of their case being in front of you, family members within a certain relation to you, you have to recuse yourself. I have some very close personal friends that I've grown up with. If they ever had something that were to come in front of the court, I would recuse myself. But just we are in a small community. You're going to know a lot of people. Just because you happen to know somebody, that's not a need to recuse yourself. And that's why I say, especially in a small community, it's really important that you be able to put your personal feelings aside and handle the cases that are in front of you in a fair and impartial manner. Because if you were to recuse yourself just because you knew every person, like I know you now, okay? If somebody were to come,
I hope I'm not going to wind up in court.
I hope
anyway.
not too. But we don't have a close personal relationship. We've just really recently met. So, it's those really close personal relationships, I recuse myself. But it's not just because I happen to know somebody and I wave to them at the supermarket.
What is the caseload like? Are there a lot of cases?
East Hampton Town Justice Court is one of the busiest justice courts in New York State. There are over 1,200 justice courts in New York State, and we've always ranked like 10, some years 4, some years 5, as far as volume and revenue. So yes, we are a very, very busy court. We have 2 judges that sit in East Hampton, and we are kept very busy.
That's amazing because,
Yeah.
I mean, our population is not that great that you would be that busy.
Our population is a lot bigger in the summertime,
Well,
so we
that's
get
true.
a lot of cases in the summertime. The winter is a slower time for us, but then what happens is a lot of the cases that come in the wintertime come in the summertime are still being handled in the winter.
Yes, I understand
So
that.
we are busy year-round. Obviously, in the summertime, we have a much higher volume of like vehicle and traffic violations, parking violations, criminal violations, and criminal misdemeanors. Our jurisdiction, criminal cases are through disposition for misdemeanor cases, and we also arraign felonies and manage felonies until they're either brought up to a higher court or they are reduced to misdemeanors, and then we would handle them. We also handle zoning cases, landlord-tenant cases, parking violations, vehicle and traffic violations, small claims and civil law cases. So we're busy. We have a wide range of things that we attend to in our local community.
Well, I'm really quite interested because in my college years, I did think about going to law school because I was very political. I like to say that when I came out, I said, Roosevelt, my mother was a very political person, she said it before Martin Luther King ever said it. But who cares what people look like and what their skin color is? It's what kind of person are they, which was the content of their character, and I was raised with that. So that was a very important part of it, and I did really think about going to law school.
Yeah.
But when I'm a little older than you, and women didn't go to law school in those days.
Some of them did. It was very rare,
Yes, it was very rare, and some of them did, and those who did usually had a parent behind them who was pushing them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, my parents didn't push me for that.
No.
But nevertheless, I had a great career and gave to the world in my teaching career.
Things have changed. A friend of mine who's a lawyer up the island recently noted to me that she went into a courtroom and she noticed that all of the individuals in the courtroom were women, the judge, the court officers, and the attorneys. Yeah, they were all women. So times have definitely changed.
Well, isn't that nice?
Yeah.
We're happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Because Lord knows we certainly have the ability to understand what's going on with people, I think perhaps maybe even better than most men.
Oh, well, I'm not going to go there, but
well, I will.
But I think actually being a woman, I bring it my perspective to things that go on the bench. And all judges have, listen, when I was an attorney, I realized that, some judges, favored certain types of things and some judges favored these kinds of things. But everybody, the way I look at it is you bring your own life experiences to the bench. You have to be fair and impartial. That is absolutely the bedrock of our criminal justice system as far as being a jurist. If you're not able to do that, then you can't be a judge. But that's not to say that you don't have your own personal experiences that play a role. Yeah.
I also think that the fact that you had such a wide range of experience in your background does help you because you tend to, being an educator, I know you knew more than a lot of other people. To know is very important, and to understand the law is very important.
Yeah.
And that's what experience comes from experience, You can't minimize the word experience because it is important.
I think it's important, especially, being on the bench, and the community is just, it's so dynamic. We have so many different things going on in this community, and the populations are changing. In the summertime, we have a lot of people from out of the community that are here just enjoying their summers. In the wintertime, you have more of your local community. Things are changing as far as businesses. There's a lot more business going on, a lot more tourism. When I was young, growing up in Amagansett, we used to say after Labor Day, we could lie across the street of Main Street in Amagansett and not worried about being hit by a car for, hours. Well, that's not the case anymore. The community has changed and it's growing, and it will continue to grow. It's a very dynamic community, and the population is just changing all the time. Yeah.
Well, I can give you some facts about that.
Yeah.
That in 1950 there were 250,000 people living full-time in Suffolk County. By 1960 there were 600,000.
Wow.
By then it became 1 million and 1.6 million now. So I mean, it has indeed changed over time.
And I think in East Hampton, if you just look at the amount of people that are retiring to East Hampton and are commuting, and with technology, people don't have to go into the city every day. So they're moving out here, and they might commute into the city 1 or 2 days a week. I think our year-round population is growing quite a bit as well. So we are a busy community. There's no doubt about it, and we continue to be busier and busier every summer. So, but you have to be up for the challenge, and I love this community. I've been here since I was born here, and except for a short period of time where I was working in the city, gaining my experiences there, which I would never change for anything, because I think you're right. The experiences I gained working in New York City, both as a caseworker, working in Westchester, New York as a law guardian and an attorney, and also working in the Taxi and Limousine Commission, which is a whole different thing. I mean, it's not working with children by any stretch of the means, but you were exposed to a huge demographic of people working at the Taxi and Limousine Commission, and that was a fascinating job. Just the sheer volume of people that we dealt with. So
well, it also increases your understanding of the human condition, and and that's a very important thing for a judge to have.
Yes, I think absolutely. I mean, listen, you have people's livelihoods in your hands when you make these decisions. You have their liberty in your hands when you make these decisions. You have how it's going to affect the loved ones that may be depending on them in your hands when you make these decisions. And you have to consider all these different things when you are evaluating cases. It's just an essential part of being a judge. And I do think that my background has made me appreciate that a lot more, not only just through my own family background, but through my work background. It's really, I have had exposure to a lot of different things, and I think that's helped my understanding and helped me as a judge in evaluating cases.
Well, that's great. That's great, Lisa.
Yeah.
I'm going to call you Lisa, and I don't call you Judge.
That's fine. You can call me Lisa. Everybody calls me Lisa. When I'm on the bench, people call me Judge, but that's okay.
But anyway, that's very important, and I'm so happy to learn that you have this kind of background and this kind of understanding of how you affect people's lives.
Yeah.
Because that's
Thank you.
That's
Thank
important.
you.
It's very important.
Yeah. It's when you're a sitting judge, I tend to be a private person. I think that's just my personality. And when you're a sitting judge, you don't really have the ability or the opportunity to explain to people what you do and why you do it. It's when I run for election that I'm actually granted this small window of opportunity to let people know, what I do. I love being a judge. I love this community. I love serving this community. I come from a family of people that have served the community in various capacities. My father was on the planning board, my mother was on the school board, my sister Dawn's on the school board. I mean, you know, and the fire departments and the ladies auxiliary, we've always been a part of this community, and I'm just glad to be able to do my part to help the community. The Justice Court is an integral part of the community. It's sometimes the first place that individuals, and the only time that individuals in our community will ever be in front of a court. It could be from a parking ticket to a speeding ticket to something more serious. And how they experience their time there is important to me. You know, one of the things that I really pride myself on is that the people that come into the court, even if they're coming in for something that's difficult, that the staff is friendly, that they try to be helpful. My court officers try to be helpful. I just got a really, really nice letter from somebody complimenting my court officers, saying that how helpful they were and how different their experience coming into East Hampton Town Justice Court was from going to other courts in other jurisdictions. So to me, that's all part of being part of the community and doing the job of a judge, and making sure that if you're going to have to come to court, you have a decent experience.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much for coming, Lisa.
Thank you, Phyllis.
I have learned so much. I really have.
I'm glad.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm very happy, and if I get a speeding ticket.
Let's hope that doesn't happen,
No,
okay?
no. Although I don't know sometimes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
I
it was
really,
wonderful.
really
I
appreciate
really appreciate getting to know you.
it. Okay.
Thank you very much for coming.
And thank you for having me.